Cruzo bordes sin papers, mochila sudor. En la yarda con mis primos, counting every free by oh. Me pararon en la esquina, luces rojas en la piel. Pero el miedo se me quiebra cuando pienso en mi abueliel. Retorno con orgullo, mira, traigo mi raíz. Homie, cargo mis fracasos como oro en cicatriz. Me sacaron de mi calle, pero no de mi razón. Tengo casa en 2 países, solo un mismo corazón. Deportados, talk Spanglish, same corazón, same fight. De LA pa' México, shining my own light. Basecamp, borrar lo que el pueblo sembró. Deportado pero fuerte, mírame, aquí sigo yo. No rendirse.
Hello. Welcome everyone to our new Comienzos Basecamp Keynote Speaker Series, where you will be inspired, empowered, and make an impact. My name is Israel Concha, and I'm part of the new Comienzos family. Thank you very much once again for being here. Now, before we get started, we have exciting news for you. Yes, today, May the 16th, 2026, we're launching the world's first AI companion and reintegration coach. Yes, that's correct. It's here to support our community 24/7. So please take a minute to scan the QR code. It's going to take you to a form where you can fill out in a few seconds, and right away, you'll be connected to your very own AI companion and reintegration coach. Let's go ahead and do this. We'll go ahead and give you 20 seconds to scan the QR code and register, starting now.
Are you ready? 20 seconds start now. Ten seconds remaining. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
Well, thank you very much for registering. And just a quick reminder that right here, you're going to be able to see all the services this technology has to offer. But most importantly is that you can access it 24/7, and that it has encrypted technology. And it can also connect you with our new Comienzos community and answer any questions you may have regarding your reintegration back to Mexico. Next slide, please. As a matter of fact, it's the first point of contact whenever you enter our Dream in Mexico ecosystem and infrastructure, either through our welcome box, our website at newcomienzos.org, any registry Google form we have for you, and also any in-person or virtual event like right now. And also, don't forget, next slide, please. Don't forget that you can download our Dream in Mexico app either through Google Play or the App Store, where you can also start creating community with New Comienzos. And most importantly, in the conversation section, you can also access your very own AI companion and reintegration coach. Next slide, please. I know you guys probably have many questions right now. Some of the most common questions: is the app free? Is this technology free? Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, all of our new Comienzos services are completely free for our community. Is my information protected? Yes, it is. We use encrypted technology. Another question: does the AI operate 24/7? Yes, it does. And that's the beauty of this 21st century technology we're using. I'm pretty sure you have many more questions, so please write them down, please save them, and by the end of this event, we'll go ahead and get started with our Q&A session. Now, we're going to do things a little bit different now that we're talking about technology. We're going to let our Lisa AI go ahead and introduce our migrant deputy, Raul Torres. So Lisa AI, if you're there, let's go ahead and get started.
Raul Torres Guerrero is the first migrant deputy in the Congress of Mexico City, elected by Mexicans living abroad in 2021 and re-elected in 2024. He holds a degree in international relations, cum laude, from Endicott College, and has completed government and negotiation studies at Harvard University, including the Harvard Law School negotiation program. He also holds a master's degree in political management from the George Washington University. Recognized as one of the most influential Mexican leaders and a prominent Latino voice in the United States, Deputy Torres brings a binational perspective to public service, migration, leadership, and the future of Mexicans abroad. We are happy to welcome to the stage Raul Torres Guerrero, the first migrant deputy from the Mexico City Congress, and our new Comienzos Basecamp keynote speaker. Please give him a warm welcome.
Migrant Deputy Raul Torres, the floor is yours. Perfect. Let's go ahead and give it a few minutes. So, migrant. Oh, okay. Mr. Raul Torres, can you hear us?
Connection is unstable. Yeah, check. Sorry, I have some issues with my internet. Is it everything fine now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Mr. Migrant
Okay,
Deputy
great.
Raul Torres, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone, especially new communities for all the work you've been doing. But mainly from not only in the US but also in other countries.
It looks like we're having a few
The
issues
connection,
with
right?
your audio. Yes. Can you hear us now?
Let me just try to give me one spot. I'll try to fix my internet. Give me 1 sec.
Perfect. We'll
Give me
wait
one.
here for a few minutes. Yes, thank you very much. By the way, today with us, we have a very important panel of dreamers, returnees, deportees, and binational families who are here with us today. And at the end of the day, we're going to be opening up the floor for questions and answers. So please get your questions ready. Okay, so we're just waiting for Migrant Deputy Raul Torres. Let's give it a few more minutes, please. On the meantime, let's go ahead and bring on the stage a few of our community members. I believe Sunashi Estrada is here with us. Hi, Sunashi, how are you?
How are you doing?
Thank you very much for making time. I have a question for you.
Sure.
So for today's event, what made you decide to join us today?
I think this is a great opportunity because definitely, well, the Diputado Raúl Torres has a lot to share with us, and this is a great opportunity for our community as well to share our thoughts. This is a great platform, to be honest. So that's what I decided to join today. And also, well, I know New Comienzos have a very, very good news, and well, that's also why I decided to join and be here, and well, make sure that our community stay connected and focus on everything that is ahead.
Well, thank you very much for being here. And
So is everything back?
oh, yes, perfect. We can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect.
So
I moved a little bit. Okay. Thank you. I'm
my,
sorry about that. I have some issues with my internet. But
no worries.
here I'm here.
Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Migrant Deputy Raul Torres.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the venue. I'm here at an event here in Mexico City. I'm with different people from the community in one of the municipalities of Mexico City. It's called Miguel Hidalgo, which is actually one of the municipalities that has more population abroad. So I'm here celebrating with moms that have families abroad. So that sorry for all. I got into this room, but sorry for the background. Um, at the end, I was mentioning I'm the first migrant deputy. That means the first diputado, which was elected in 2021 by Mexicans living abroad. It's the first time in history, in the Mexican history, that we have a voice in the Mexican Congress. And that's very important because it shows the importance of not only about migration itself, but about the stories that go behind migration. And I've always said that migration is only the people that leave the country, like me, for example. I left Mexico when I was 16 years old. Now I'm 36. But also for the people that stay in Mexico, for our families that stay in our country. And that's also migration. But also migration comes in a third way, which is the returnees and the deportees. All the migrants that for any reason, they have to come back to Mexico. So that's the whole circle of migration. And that's why as a diputado migrante, I always try to talk about the stories of these three perspectives. So, just to mention a little bit about my story, because I want to introduce. Um, I know I know how families feel when they are separated, because that's my story. That's my personal story. When I was 5 years old, my dad decided to migrate to Los Angeles after we lost everything in the 1994 crisis. He left Mexico with only $100 in his pocket. Uh, he started from scratch. He crossed the border, no documents, anything. So I remember those mid 1990s. I was 5 years old, then I turned six, I turned seven, I turned eight. And sooner or later, you start asking, where is my dad? Or where is my relative for other people, right? And you start understanding that there are some rules that you don't know, like migration rules, about visas, about status, all that information that when you're a kid, you don't know them. And that's one of the first things I will tell dreamers that are in the US, because you guys went to the US when you were kids. You didn't know where you were going. You were just following your parents, and you were raised in the US. I was partly raised in Mexico, and then I moved to the US. I moved to New York. My dad went from Los Angeles to New York, and we have a family business. We do interior design, so we work with different restaurants, hotels, uh, country clubs, whatever, houses in general. And I helped my dad to make our living, right? So then I applied to college. I went to school in Boston. Then I moved to Paris because I've always said that education is the base of everything. So I wanted to be the best in what I was studying. I studied international relations, so I kind of know how the US behaves, or kind of understand the international relations perspective from the United States. Then I was in Paris, where I learned the European perspective, which is completely different from the ones in America. And then I moved back to Mexico. So that was the second part of the cycle, or the third one, I would say. The first was when my dad left and my family stayed in Mexico. The second part was when I left Mexico and I migrated to the US. And the third was when I came back to Mexico after living in the US. And I found that even though it was my home country, I didn't feel like it was my country, because after being in the US for a while, having friends, traditions, kind of your daily life in America, and you're back in Mexico, it looks like Mexico doesn't receive you like open arms, or welcomes you that way. And that's a sad story, but that's the reality. We all think that Mexico is welcoming you and waiting for you, but that's not true. So that's why I wanted to start with this part of my story, because nothing has been easy, and I know nothing has been easy for you guys either. So now that I'm a representative and I got reelected in 2024, I want to make things less difficult. I wouldn't say easier. I would say less difficult. First of all, because you guys have to connect when you are back in Mexico. After that, I went back to the US because I couldn't. After 2020, in 2013, I went back to Mexico. I didn't find a way to, like grow personally or professionally in Mexico. So I went back to the US. I had that opportunity, that blessing. But I know a lot of people don't. So now that I'm a representative since 2021 and reelected in 2024, I want to make things different. First of all, to support our families that stay in Mexico. Why? Because our families are the core of our values, of what ties us with Mexico, our links with Mexico. So, first of all, and I'll switch this to Spanish because there may be family that don't speak English, porque las familias son nuestro motor. Es lo que nos mantiene unidos con México y para mí es muy importante como diputado hablarle a las familias. ¿Y qué le hablo a las familias? Esto lo voy a decir en español porque es para las familias de todos los que están en Estados Unidos o que han regresado. Primero que nada, que ser mexicano en el extranjero o ser migrante no significa algo negativo. Ser migrante hoy es una gran ventaja porque conoces parte de los dos mundos. Y les voy a contar una pequeña historia sin alargarme de más. Yo estaba recorriendo durante la campaña una parte de Iztapalapa, quienes sean de la Ciudad de México conocen que es una zona muy popular. Y entré a una casa donde la pequeñita estaba alrededor de 5 o 6 años, yo creo que estaba en la primaria, y las típicas preguntas que le hacen, yo me acordaba mucho cuando yo era niño y mi papá estaba en Estados Unidos. Dibuja, ¿no? ¿Dónde están tus papás? ¿Qué te imaginas? Y me decía la mamá que vivía con la niña que su papá estaba en Chicago, no tenía documentos y que pues le daba pena a la niña decir que su papá estaba ahí. ¿Por qué? Porque los demás niños tenían que el papá policía, carpintero, etcétera, y contaban las historias de cuando iban con su papá al trabajo o cuando veían a papá regresar. Esta chiquita no lo podía hacer. ¿Por qué? Porque no podía platicar con su papá. Entonces, para mí fue una parte en la cual yo me acordaba cuando era niño. Y yo le decía a esa niña, no te preocupes, tienes al papá más interesante de todos tus compañeritos. Y te voy a decir por qué. Vamos a dibujar juntos. Que una, sabes que tu papá puede hoy hablar 2 idiomas que los demás papás de tus compañeritos no. Entonces para la niña empezó a cambiar la narrativa. Empezó a sentir pena por decir, sí, mi papá también habla un poco de inglés. ¿Has visto dónde vive tu papá? Mira, ven, te voy a enseñar videos de dónde es Chicago, los edificios, todo bonito. Y mira, tu papá puede estar allá y muchos de los papás de tus compañeritos no. Entonces, fuimos cambiando para que sintiera orgullo. Después pasó el recorrido y me contacta la mamá de la niña y me dice que la niña salió súper emocionada cuando presentó lo que era su papá, porque estaba orgullosa de que su papá estaba en Estados Unidos, que hablaba un poco de inglés y enseñó cuál era la ciudad de Chicago. Se llenó de orgullo y me dijo, muchas gracias, diputado. Le dije, es que lo que hoy hago por su niña es lo que yo hubiera querido hace 20 años y lo que estoy seguro que muchos papás en Estados Unidos que no tienen los documentos o las posibilidades de regresar, desearían que sus hijos estén bien orgullosos y que no sufran de bullying porque no pueden unirse con sus familias. Y yo le dije, y yo te prometo que en cuanto entre al Congreso, mi tarea principal va a ser que no nos vean como el pobrecito migrante, ni como si fuéramos mexicanos de segunda clase. Y a partir de ahí fue mi bandera, que no se nos viera como si fuéramos el pobrecito o la pobrecita por estar en los Estados Unidos o por aquellos que regresaron. Y yo por eso, and then switch back to English, because one of the things that I always do in Congress is I go to the floor and I say my speech in English. And you know, the first time I spoke English in Congress, people from Morena, from the ruling party, started laughing at me. They started yelling at me, shouting different bad things. But one of them said, falso mexicano. That means fake Mexican. And they told me fake Mexican or falso mexicano because I spoke English in Congress. And I said, you know what? You know why I speak English? It's because I talk to those second and third generations, and I talk to those kids that were raised in the U.S. and they don't speak a perfect Spanish. That's why I speak English, because I represent them as well. And I also represent those deportees and returnees that are back here in Mexico City that are not fluent in Spanish, but they're fluent in English. And one of the main things I started promoting was how to introduce these populations back in Mexico to not only be seen as bilingual teachers or as people that can work for telemarketing. No, I started saying these people have different capacities, attitudes that can benefit the economic sector in Mexico. So I took to the different chambers. I'm part of the Economic Development Committee in Mexico. And I talked to the different chambers, Coparmex, Canaco, the different sectors, the business sectors in Mexico, and tell them, start to see our Mexicans living abroad as an asset for our economy. Not only about remittances, but also for those that are back here in Mexico, they have other kind of mindset. They were raised in the US. They know how from the lowest part, let's say in construction, these people know how to use different tools, and these tools have technology. It's different from the albañiles, right? The masons that are here. So, and that's from the lowest. And then you can start looking at the different people that are like in other levels or skilled workers. So I started pushing for the economic sector to hire Mexicans, not only that were living in the US, but also open different work spots for Mexicans that are back in Mexico. That started in 2021. The second thing was, I remember when I met different communities, return communities that Israel introduced me to in Mexico, and all the team of New Comienzos. They told me, you know what, when we come back to Mexico, we don't have any ID because maybe we crossed to the US when we were kids. So we have no records here in Mexico, and I cannot ask for a job or apply for a job. I cannot do anything because I don't have any documents to like start with. And I said, you know what? That's true. And I call that the La Ley del Paso Cero, like the step zero or the by step law or bill. And that means that in all the ports of entry, that means airports or bus stations, there are kiosks where you can have a photo ID with your information, and that's considered a legit ID in Mexico City, like an official ID. With that ID, and I want to say that in Spanish now, con esa identificación que te tomas en un puerto de entrada, te toman la foto, te toman tus datos, te toman incluso algún QR con tus datos de redes sociales, con un resume, y eso te permite que puedas ir a una alcaldía o ir a la tesorería para sacar tu licencia e iniciar trámites. Esta que yo le llamo el paso cero es porque todo estaba hecho para que alguien llegara con su credencial de lector e iniciara su vida de vuelta. Pero ¿qué pasó con aquellos que no regresaron con ningún documento? Entonces no podían ser fantasmas reales. Y eso es una de las cosas que también buscamos, identificaciones para que quienes regresen pudieran voltear de vuelta. Otra de las cosas que nosotros buscamos también lo quiero decir, es los temas de seguridad en los corredores de entrada. Y lo quiero decir en español porque esto tiene que ver mucho con México. Desgraciadamente, México sabemos que es peligroso muchas veces en las entradas y hay mafias que abusan de la comunidad deportada o retornada. Nosotros decidimos que desde 2021 y a la fecha, no solamente en diciembre como era antes por las temporadas decembrinas, sino que durante el año se hagan corredores seguros. Es decir, que los lugares donde encontramos comunidad retornada, como en el caso, por ejemplo, Lilo Los Ángeles, que en lugares donde hay turismo que pueda ayudar a ustedes como comunidad que habla inglés a incorporarse, haya policías que les pueda asistir. Eso es lo más importante, que no les vayan a robar lo poco o lo mucho que puedan traer. Entonces, ese también fue uno de los puntos que buscamos, seguridad, y que incluso pudiera, nosotros abrimos con la Secretaría de Seguridad Ciudadana, es decir, con la policía, le pedimos que incrementar el número de espacios para policías turísticos. ¿Por qué? Porque ustedes, you guys speak English, some others speak even some a third language or a dialect, and that helps, and that brings a broader vision to the police in Mexico City, right? So that was another project that we pushed with the police safety department in Mexico City to open different spots for tourist police where you guys could also come not only as a police officer itself, but also to for capacitating and professionalism, right? So that was like the first part of the Diputación Migrante. In the second part of the Diputación Migrante, which started in 2024 all the way to 2027, and we're in the midst of it, we started to, after what's going on in the United States, to start working on the narrative that the people that are back in Mexico, first of all, they're not, no son delincuentes, no son personas que estén metidos en pandillas o que tengan problemas con la ley. You guys have no felonies, or I mean, most of the people are back in Mexico have been voluntarily or deported, but they don't have any issues with public safety in the U.S. or crime relations. So what we started working since 2024 is how to integrate them into the regular cultural, social, and economic life. The first part of the Diputación Migrante started with the trámites, like los trámites, todo lo que tuvieran que hacer para tener identidad. La segunda parte ha sido para poder involucrarlos con la vida de la capital del país, que hoy se abre de la cultura que ustedes pueden aportar, ¿no? Que pueden hablar, hay muchos que se dedican a escribir, hay otros que se dedican a pintar, hay otros que pueden ayudarnos en temas de educación. Eso también es la otra parte donde nosotros queremos hablar de la experiencia que representa. Que se construya, as I've said, it's not about the American dream that finished. It's about the Mexican dream, or the Mexico City dream that can start. And that's that you don't start from zero. You have here a Diputado Migrante that understands the asset, the capacities, all the new vision that we have. For example, I will tell you how we started with this in terms of the cultural part. For example, in movies, I'm part of the culture committee in Congress, and there is an investment for the film industry to invest in Mexico and empower the filming industry in Mexico City. But what I put on the law is that they have to involve Mexicans that are back here in Mexico, because you guys speak even a better English than I do. You guys have a perfect accent. You guys can bring your experiences into these sectors, actually, right? I remember I talked to some of the different actresses and actors from Mexico that they told me, you know what, in the beginning, we were hired in Hollywood because we spoke English with a Mexican accent. So we were the Mexican character in the US. But now they're getting new characters, right? New roles. And they have to have a perfect English accent. And I remember one of them, I think I told you this story, Israel, Eisa Gonzalez, and some other actresses that are really famous in some series and all that in the US. They told me, you know how much I've been spending in the US, in Los Angeles, to get like a proficiency on my English. And I told them, why don't you hire Mexicans that were there, that are back here in Mexico? They will be less expensive, much cheaper. They speak the same kind of English, the perfect accents, everything. And you help them and they help you. And they were like, that sounds great, but how do I find them? Right? So that's one small example of what I've always said. We need to see Mexicans abroad and returnees in a different perspective. Not as the people are like, oh, sorry about these guys. Oh, it feels so bad. Let's give them some tips and that's it. No, it's how to empower them, right? Because most of you, so for example, I promoted one of the last things I would like to say and then answer questions was El Fondo para el Migrante en Retorno, right? This is a fund for migrants that are back in Mexico. And I said, we need this fund. We need this funding from the government in three ways. One is all your documents to be ready in Mexico. Second, and most important, is how you can have a budget to be back to introduce you back into Mexico City, right? Or into Mexico in general. Um, we asked for this Fondo Permanente en Retorno for about 15,000 pesos a month during 3 months. And why 3 months? Because those are like 3 months that you take to take over in Mexico, right? To recover, to empezar de nuevo. Y este fondo por almirante en retorno es eso. Desafortunadamente, el gobierno no nos aprobó las cantidades y lo que sí aprobaron es un presupuesto muy pequeño de 2,000 pesos. Sin embargo, no me quedé con las manos atadas. Yo lo que pedí en el siguiente paso es ahora que las alcaldías, en el caso de la Ciudad de México, tuvieran un apoyo para sus migrantes en retorno. Hay alcaldías, como lo es la alcaldía Miguel Hidalgo, donde hoy les digo que estoy visitando, a mamás de mexicanos que están en el extranjero, o incluso comunidad que regresó, alcaldías con Miguel Hidalgo, Benito Juárez, incluso alcaldías del mismo partido del gobierno. Yo trabajo con todos, independientemente que soy un diputado del PAN, la alcaldía Magdalena Contreras, la alcaldía Álvaro Obregón, dan también apoyo a sus mexicanos en retorno. Es decir, juntamos una bolsa federal, juntamos la bolsa de las alcaldías y lo más importante son también los temas que hemos podido hacer con el sector privado. Y lo último que yo les quiero decir es que propuse que en el board de la Ciudad de México, donde se reúnen los sectores empresariales, académicos y de gobierno, exista un lugar en ese board para mexicanos en el exterior. Se aprobó por todos los partidos, fue una propuesta mía, y hoy existe ya, está por anunciarse quién representará ese spot, ese lugar, ese asiento en el board que decide la vida económica, pública y académica de la ciudad. Y por eso lo pedí, porque quiero que se involucre la comunidad que regresa y los vínculos también que hay con los que están afuera. Y ahí es uno de los temas que con lo que yo concluyo. Cambio entre español e inglés por quienes puedan o no entender uno u otro idioma. Y les agradezco y sobre todo me encantaría responder las distintas preguntas que ustedes puedan tener. Sé que han escrito algunas aquí en la barra. Si me lo pudieran comentar, con mucho gusto las respondo y de todo les puedo comentar.
Thank you very much, Migrant Deputy Raul Torres. Thank you so much for joining us. You gave us a lot of great information today, and it's encouraging to hear about government assistance for our community, even though it has often been very difficult for many people to access or find these resources. We have to be honest. And going back to the film industry, I'm sure many people in our community would be interested in using their skills, especially their English skills, to pursue these kinds of opportunities. So that being said, thank you very much for being here. And we're going to go ahead and open the floor to our Q&A session from our panel. By the way, Raul, right now in the panel is configured from returnees, deportees, and binational families. Some of us returned to Mexico 1 year or less, so they're eager to find more services for our community, especially in Mexico City. So let's go ahead and open it to Q&A. I do see one question here. This was given to us through Facebook. Raul Torres, you've mentioned that our community finally has a voice in the Mexico City Congress. What concrete opportunities or support currently exists for deportees, returnees, dreamers, and binational families rebuilding their lives in Mexico?
Perfect. I'll just try to summarize everything. First, para las familias, esto lo diré en español porque son las familias. Las familias hoy incluso modificamos en la ley de vivienda para que las familias como grupo prioritario. ¿Por qué? Y voy a explicarlo. Porque los grupos prioritarios se considera, por ejemplo, adultos mayores, gente con discapacidad, indígenas, gente que necesita o tiene otro tipo de apoyo, madres solteras. Pero ¿qué pasa con esas familias donde estás casado legalmente, pero tu esposo o tu esposa están en los Estados Unidos? O sea, en el papel estás, en la vida práctica no lo estás. Y tú como madre soltera no puedes recibir los apoyos porque oficialmente estás casada, pero en la práctica sabes que no y tienes que sacar a tu niño o a tu niña adelante. Entonces, de entrada pedimos que los grupos prioritarios se considere a los mexicanos, a las familias de mexicanos en el exterior, a mexicanos migrantes. Eso es una. Y también pedimos que sea visto como una ventanilla prioritaria, que no sea, es decir, que sea atemporal a quienes regresan a México. Es decir, los programas de las distintas alcaldías y del mismo gobierno algunas veces tienen un tiempo en específico que tienen que aplicar. Pero si tú regresas a México, no dices, yo voy a regresar solo en septiembre, o yo voy a regresar en marzo, regresas durante el año, y que puedas aplicar a esto, ¿no? Entonces, eso es una. Dos, tiene que ver con las identificaciones, ya lo mencionaba, para poder reintegrarte. Tres, es que se abrió con el Consejo Coordinador Empresarial, con la Cámara de Comercio y con la Coparmex, la CANIRAC y no me recuerdo, me falta otra cámara, oportunidades laborales, incluso en las alcaldías, si no me recuerdo, los miércoles, hablo del caso de Miguel Hidalgo, que es el centro, el punto económico más importante de la ciudad, junto con Cuauhtémoc y Coajimalpa, para quienes están en el poniente. Los miércoles hay ferias de empleo y hay oportunidades para los mexicanos que regresan. Esa es una. ¿Qué más? Bueno, hemos hecho bastantes temas que te puedo mencionar cada uno. El fondo probablemente en retorno, eso es importante. Las distintas alcaldías, algunas lo tienen, otras no. Y lo hemos manejado por parte del seguro del desempleo para que puedan aplicar ahí como, pues sí, desempleados, vamos a llamarle, con un más o menos un promedio de 7,000 pesos que se les da. Entonces, son este tipo de cuestiones que he tratado como de resumir, pero sí hay, por lo menos hoy decimos, si no son suficientes porque nunca lo serán, pero sí creo que hoy son por lo menos un tema que está en la mesa y que antes no lo estaba.
Thank you very much for the information. It's great information. We have a question from a panel member, Ricardo Loredo. Go ahead.
¿Qué tal? Mucho gusto, Raúl, gracias por tomarte el tiempo. Saludos a todos en la comunidad. Mi pregunta es si existe algún programa específico o propuesta legislativa que brinde apoyo a las áreas como la educación o certificación de estudios o inclusive acceso a financiamientos o acompañamientos para emprendimientos aquí en México para los recién retornados.
Buenísimo. Sí, presenté 3 leyes que te puedo mencionar muy claras. La ley de sociedades mercantiles, esa la modificamos, y la ley de cooperativas para que tú puedas firmar con un mexicano residente en el exterior. Es decir, hoy tú, Ricardo, puedes estar en la Ciudad de México y antes tenías que, si querías firmar un contrato en una cooperativa o una sociedad mercantil, antes tenías que ir, más bien, la otra persona tenía que venir a México a firmar. Hoy ya no, hoy lo podemos hacer con el dedito, ¿no? Como funciona en una tableta. Y eso ya es válido, ¿no? Otra de las cosas que, por ejemplo, es en los temas civiles y familiares, en las audiencias ya también nos fuimos a audiencias virtuales. ¿Por qué? Porque hay veces que puedes estar físicamente de vuelta en México, pero estás solucionando un problema a distancia, ¿no? Entonces, ese es. Ahora, otra de las leyes que metí en las de MIPYMES, que son micro, pequeñas y medianas empresas, ¿no? Modifiqué la ley para que toda micro, pequeña y mediana empresa que se forme hoy en la Ciudad de México tiene que tener distintas características a comparado a antes. Primero que nada, tiene que tener una agenda de género, fortalecer la economía de las mujeres, ¿no? Eso es primordial. Yo siempre he creído que empoderar a una mujer económicamente nos ayuda. Segundo, que las empresas en México tengan una visión internacional. Si no tienes una empresa de emprendimiento con capacidad internacional, entonces, pues como para qué emprendes, ¿no? El mundo te va a comer. Y ahí es donde juega muy importante la comunidad, tanto mexicanos en el exterior como la comunidad retornada. Porque te aporta esta parte de lo internacional. Es decir, si tú eres un mexicano en retorno, con eso satisfaces el criterio para formar tu micro, pequeño o mediana empresa, ¿no? O si tú eres un mexicano en el exterior, pero eres familiar de un mexicano en el exterior y es parte de la empresa, también con esto satisfaces el requisito, ¿no? Si no lo tienes que buscar, ¿no? O sea, es una manera de involucrarlo de una manera voluntaria, pero también con la ley atrás, ¿no? Hemos pedido, por ejemplo, los fondos que tengan que ver con emprendimiento. Desgraciadamente el gobierno no se ha caracterizado por ser uno de los que más apoya el emprendimiento, pero como no voy a caer en temas políticos, lo que hicimos fue buscar con el sector empresarial y con las distintas cámaras. Ejemplo, no nada más con las cámaras tradicionales que ya mencionaba, que son la Coparmex, la Canaco, la Canirac, etcétera, sino con las cámaras extranjeras en México. Por ejemplo, con la American Chamber of Commerce, con la Asociación de Empresarios Mexicanos, con la US Mexico Chamber, con capítulo en México, es decir, la American Society, con y la Canadian Chamber también, las cámaras que tienen que ver con el comercio en América del Norte sobre todo, que tienen que ver con México, que también tengan una oportunidad laboral, que abran estos espacios que mencionábamos, para que los mexicanos en el exterior, o sobre todo en este caso los retornados, puedan involucrarse y puedan trabajar ahí con esa experiencia de poder trabajar para una empresa americana que tiene sede en México y no tengan que empezar desde cero en capacitar a Raúl, a Ricardo, a Ana, a quien sea, en el idioma, en cómo funciona el mercado de Estados Unidos, etcétera, porque ese tiempo cuesta dinero, ¿no? Entonces, eso también es una de las cuestiones. Y pues, bueno, creo que ya te respondí algunas, pero cualquier cosa, pues ahí estamos.
Thank you very much for sharing a lot of great information, especially knowing that now some of the services can be done online, especially that many of us are binational families. We have family in the States and in Mexico, and many times we do want to create opportunities in our home country. So that's great information. I know we have 5 minutes left. I would like to introduce Sunashi Estrada, a member of our panel. She has a question for you.
Hi, Raul. Thank you for giving us this time. I have a couple of questions here that I received through our social media as well, from Christian Espinosa specifically. And well, he is asking what concrete policies, partnership, or investments are being developed to ensure that deported and returning Mexicans with postgraduate education and professional experience have access to real economic mobility and long-term career pathways in Mexico.
Perfect. Thank you, Christian. It's kind of the same answer that I said to Ricardo, but I would complement it with right now, for example, after 2021 that I got into office in Congress, I talked to SEP, because it's la Secretaría de Educación Pública. Because in the past, I remember even when I went back to Mexico, you couldn't kind of revalidate your resume, your title, whatever, right? And after 2021, I remember it started in 2022. You could revalidate most of your studies abroad, back in Mexico. So one was, ese era uno de los primeros puntos, right? Because people came back from the US. Some of them finished their major. Some others have like a certificate or a mid certificate, depending on if they went to college or only 2 years or some of those. And then I went to Conocer. Conocer is this kind of area from SEP that certificates different aspects, right? And Conocer gave also certifications for returnees of what on the experience or the expertise they had in the US. For example, in the low skill ones, electricistas, carpinteros, and English professors in the middle part, and obviously in the high part, in the business sector. Esas revalidaciones las buscamos incluso también con Conocer, existen. What I'm promoting now is that on the USMCA revision that's going on, we could add this kind of new certifications or new certificates as NAFTA certifications, right? That you can either, for example, in terms of microchips and STEM, all las carreras STEM que tienen que ver con tecnología, que si las estudias o te preparas en México, puedas ejecutarlas en los Estados Unidos. Y que si lo estudiaste o lo ejecutaste en los Estados Unidos, sean válidas de vueltas en México. Entonces, esto ya es una realidad. Esto nuevo del TEMEC lo estamos buscando que venga en la firma, pero ya lo estamos trabajando directamente y de hecho ya lo avanzamos.
Thank you very much
Thank you
for,
so
for
much.
the great information. Thank you, Sunashi. Raul, we have many great questions in our social media platforms. We're going to go ahead and make sure we forward them to you so you could follow up. Thank you very much. And we have one last participant for today. Sirio Hernandez has a final question for you.
Hola Raúl, hello everybody. Bueno, first of all, Raúl, muchas gracias por todo el apoyo que nos has dado aquí en México a los que hemos regresado a Estados Unidos, igual como tú, pues yo me fui a Estados Unidos cuando tenía 4 años. Estuve ya básicamente toda mi vida, 25 years, regresé en el 2011 y pues gracias a mi comienzos y los programas que van haciendo todos, igual tú Raúl, que nos da la oportunidad de salir adelante aquí en México. Once again, thanks a lot for that. Y mi pregunta nada más sería, I'm not sure, but I think you have a migrant center. How does it operate, and how does it assist the Mexican community returning back from the U.S. and how can somebody help within that migrant center?
Yeah. The migrant center, we push for it. We try to have one physically in Mexico City, and that was not possible. So we put it into the different 16 municipalities, right? And that's in when you go into let's how to explain that. In each municipality, en cada alcaldía, you have Sandys, right? And you have these areas, depending on which one you go to, when they have English classes, for example, when you have, in some others, you have kind of clases técnicas, ¿no? En otras tienes temas de salud mental, ¿no? Lo hemos distribuido en distintos temas: empoderamiento de la mujer, atención psicológica, temas de seguridad, y que se van repartiendo durante el mes. Es decir, los miércoles algunos son de adultos mayores, ¿no? En algunas alcaldías, en otros lados son de niños. Entonces, cada alcaldía tiene por lo menos esta lógica. Y en la ciudad existen 3 centros para refugios. Es decir, para que si tú regresas a la Ciudad de México, you can go into there and stay there until you find a job, but you must apply for jobs, right? You are not. It's not for homeless. It's not for no. It's for people that are back in Mexico City that are trying to find a way back into the Mexican atmosphere, right, and prepare back into the economy or whatever. So you have 3 different points: one in Tláhuac, one in Iztapalapa, one in Cuauhtémoc. So it's kind of center, south, and east, something like that, of Mexico City. That's for centers where you can have a night, or you take a nap, or sleep, or live there for like 3 months, I guess. Is and in the other municipalities, we have them according to the different issues like mental health, children, elders, whatever, in different areas. But that's how we work with them, and we're always asking for volunteers that can help us with this kind, because I've always said that you can only understand migration if you've been a migrant. If you're not a migrant, then you are what I always said, migrantólogo. You try to explain what migration is, but you will never understand what it is because you've never migrated, right? Or you've only been to the US as a tourist, or, but it's different when you're a migrant. Y esa es una de las cosas que a mí me falta mucho pedirles. Y una cosa más también, rumbo al mundial, estamos pidiendo en algunas alcaldías, como lo es Miguel Hidalgo, que se involucren, porque tenemos un programa de enseñarle inglés a la gente de servicio, como pueden ser camareros en los hoteles, pueden ser meseros, y pueden ser lo que yo ahora estoy promoviendo a los negocios más pequeños, las zapaterías, las tintorerías, que van a tener a todos estos extranjeros que vienen a México por el mundial y después por un tema de gentrificación, que vean esto como una oportunidad. Un caso muy chistoso, en la Roma, que es un lugar de mucha gentrificación, we have a lady there that makes really good quesadillas. Listen to this. She started speaking English because there was there was one guy that was a deputy, actually. He only spoke English, but he taught some English classes, basic lessons, to this lady that makes quesadillas. And since it was the only quesadillas kiosk, right, that spoke English, all the tourists that were in that area in Roma went there, So actually, you can go it's in Merida Street. in La Calle Merida, it's full of tourists. And that's the reason because the lady there started learning English when she gave some quesadillas to this guy that was living there. Uh, and he said, like, I don't have money to pay for this, but let me just teach you some English and you'll see that you start getting new profits, right? So, and that's the reality. That's a simple kind of joke, but that's the reality, a simple example. But that's some of the things that I want to push in different areas, especially in these economic belts of Santa Fe all the way down to Polanco and all the way down to El Pedregal, San Angel, where the big companies and big businesses are.
Gracias, gracias, Raúl.
Thank you very
De
much,
nada.
Sirio. Migrant Deputy Raul Torres, on behalf of our new Comienzos community, we wanted to thank you for your time today. If you could leave us a final message, especially for everyone watching today who feels uncertain about their future after returning to Mexico and who are rebuilding their lives with dignity and purpose. Thank you
First of
very much.
all, I want to tell you guys that you are welcome in Mexico. It doesn't mean that the American dream finished. It means that the Mexico City dream starts. You have a migrant deputy. I understand migration because I lived migration myself. My family is a migrant. I have different relatives that understand. I have suffered through migration. Some of them still in the US, some others back here in Mexico. And I understand the great capacities and the great assets that deportees or returnees represent to Mexico City. Y para las familias, yo quiero que sepan que como diputado migrante de los mexicanos en el exterior, también represento a las familias. Ese dolor, esa incertidumbre que muchas veces hay de qué pasará con quienes están del otro lado de la frontera o qué pasará ahora que regresar. Siempre hablando con la cabeza al frente, siempre hablando con el orgullo de ser migrante. Habremos quienes podemos ir y venir, habrá quienes ya no lo podrán hacer, pero no, eso no significa que eso nos hace menos mexicanos. Al contrario, si ustedes hablan inglés o hablan español, eso les hace que tengan una riqueza que no todos los mexicanos tienen. Y que sepan que tienen aquí un diputado migrante que va a hablar por ustedes como familia de mexicanos en el exterior. And for those that don't speak Spanish, trust me, you have here a migrant that represents, a deputy that represents migrants in Mexico City. Whenever you are here in Mexico City, you can stop by Mexico City Congress. I'll welcome you. I'll seat you where all the members of Congress sit, because that's the spot for you guys. I'm only the voice, but you are the strength of it. Thank you very much, Israel, New Comienzos, and I'm here to welcome everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, Raul Torres. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us in our New Comienzos Keynote Speaker Series. Before we leave, we would like to take a final group picture with everyone. So if you can please turn on your cameras, and whenever you're ready, remember, New Comienzos, knocking on doors.
Knocking on doors.
Thank you very much, everyone. See y'all later.
Thank you. Gracias.
Adiós,
Thank
gracias.
you. Thank you, Raul. Thank you, Israel. Thank you all.